There's a particular kind of panic that comes from knowing you're about to disappoint the people who love you most. It's not the
I
quick
can't
fear of
believe this is
physical
happening.
danger or the sharp
This
sting
changes
of
everything.
embarrassment.
What am I going to
It's
do?
deeper, a slow burning dread that starts in your chest and spreads through your entire body like ice water through your veins. Jake Morrison knew that panic intimately as he stood in the sun-drenched vineyard of his cousin Maya's wedding reception, watching his entire extended family gather around 3 long tables beneath strings of Edison lights that would glow like fireflies once evening fell. Sonoma County stretched out around them in rolling hills of grapevines, the September afternoon warm and golden, the kind of California day that made you believe in fresh starts and happy endings. But Jake wasn't thinking about fresh starts. He was thinking about lies. His daughter Lily tugged at his hand, her 8-year-old face scrunched in confusion. She wore a pale pink dress that matched the wedding colors, her dark blonde hair pulled back with a ribbon that was already coming loose. In her other arm, she clutched the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2, Mr. Hopscotch, worn soft from years of love and comfort. The words came out louder than she intended. "Daddy, why does everyone keep asking about Emma?" Jake's throat tightened. The universe had terrible timing. His grandmother materialized beside them with the uncanny speed of a woman who'd spent 80 years perfecting the art of appearing exactly where she was needed, or, in this case, where Jake desperately wished she wasn't. Rose Morrison wore a lavender dress and her best pearls, the ones his grandfather had given her on their 50th wedding anniversary. Her silver hair was styled in the elegant updo she reserved for special occasions. Her grip on his arm was surprisingly strong. "There you are, Jake." She smiled down at Lily before her blue eyes found Jake's face again. "And my beautiful great-granddaughter. Lily, darling, why don't you go find Cousin Emma and keep her company? I need to talk to your daddy for a moment." Lily's confusion deepened, her mouth opening to protest. Jake steered his daughter toward the elaborate display of wedding cake and pastries before she could finish the thought. "The dessert table needs your expert opinion, sweetie. Go pick out something good for us to share later, okay?" Lily gave him a look that suggested she knew something was wrong, but wasn't quite sure what. Then she scampered off toward the sweets with Mr. Hopscotch bouncing against her hip. Rose's voice was gentle but firm. "Jake, we need to talk about Emma." Every muscle in Jake's body tensed. "Grandma, 18 months, Jake. 18 months you've been telling us about this wonderful woman, and we've never met her. Not once." Rose's blue eyes, still sharp despite her years, studied his face with the precision of a woman who'd raised 3 children and knew when they were hiding something. "Your mother and I drove all the way from Sacramento hoping today would finally be the day." Sweat prickled at the back of Jake's neck despite the pleasant breeze. The lie tasted worse every time he told it, growing stale and rotten in his mouth. She got held up. Work thing." His Aunt Patricia appeared with wineglass in hand, her expression skeptical. Patricia had made suspicion into an art form, the kind of woman who checked restaurant receipts for mathematical errors and read user reviews before buying anything more expensive than a toothbrush. "On a Saturday? What does Emma do again? You've been remarkably vague about that." The words stumbled out. "She's a consultant." Patricia's eyebrow arched. "How convenient and non-specific." Rose patted Jake's arm. "Patricia, leave him alone." But then her voice softened with something worse than suspicion. Concern. "Though I have to say, sweetheart, your mother's starting to wonder if Emma exists at all." The words hit him like a physical blow. His mother, Sarah Morrison, had been through enough disappointment in her life without Jake adding to it with elaborate deceptions. She and his father, Tom, had worked double shifts for years to keep the family afloat after the recession hit his dad's construction business. They'd sacrificed everything to give Jake and his sister decent childhoods. And this was how he repaid them? With lies stacked on top of lies, until the whole tower threatened to collapse. Jake forced the words out. She exists. Technically, it wasn't a complete lie. Emma existed as a fiction, a carefully constructed shield he'd built 18 months ago after his ex-fiancée Madison had left him with nothing but a note and a closet full of wedding planning binders. Emma was his answer to every well-meaning blind date setup, every pitying look from married relatives, every careful inquiry about whether he was ready to try again. Emma was perfect on paper, kind, stable, understanding about his single father responsibilities, patient with his demanding work schedule at Morrison Woodworks. Emma was also completely, entirely, catastrophically fake. Patricia pressed forward. Then where is she? The ceremony's been over for an hour. Before Jake could manufacture another excuse, the wedding photographer appeared at his elbow. The young woman had her camera raised, her smile professionally bright. Excuse me, are you Jake Morrison? Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. Yes? The bride asked me to get some shots of you with your girlfriend. She said Emma should be around here somewhere? The photographer glanced around expectantly, already framing shots in her mind. Maya mentioned she really wanted family photos with all the couples. Every eye within hearing distance turned toward him. His cousin Derek, a detective with the Sacramento Police Department who noticed everything and forgot nothing, paused mid-conversation with his wife. Uncle Frank stopped telling his terrible joke about the bartender and the duck. Even Lily had frozen at the dessert table, a petit four halfway to her mouth, watching him with wide eyes that held too much understanding for an 8-year-old. Jake's brain short-circuited. He had approximately 30 seconds before his entire extended family realized he'd been lying for a year and a half. Derek would give him that look, the disappointed one that hurt worse than anger. His mother would try not to cry and fail. His father would get quiet in that way that meant he was deeply hurt but didn't know how to express it. Grandma Rose would probably forgive him eventually, but the betrayal in her eyes would haunt him for years. And Lily, God, what would Lily think of her father? The man who was supposed to teach her about honesty and integrity. The panic crystallized into something sharper, more desperate. Jake spun around, scanning the crowd of wedding guests scattered across the vineyard grounds. His eyes landed on a woman standing alone by the champagne fountain, her back to him. She wore a midnight blue dress that caught the afternoon light, her auburn hair swept up in an elegant twist. She was reaching for a glass, her movements graceful and unhurried. Before rational thought could stop him, before he could consider consequences or alternatives or the basic decency of not involving a complete stranger in his elaborate web of deception, Jake strode across the grass with the confidence of a man who absolutely, definitely knew what he was doing and wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his life. His voice carried across the space, loud enough for his family to hear. Emma! There you are, sweetheart. The woman turned around. Time seemed to slow as Jake registered her face for the first time. Striking amber eyes widened in surprise beneath perfectly shaped brows. High cheekbones caught the golden afternoon light. Full lips parted in confusion, revealing white teeth and the beginning of a protest. She was beautiful in that classic, timeless way that belonged in old Hollywood films, the kind of beauty that would look the same at 30, 50, 70. But more than her appearance, what struck Jake in that frozen moment was the intelligence in her eyes. Sharp, assessing, instantly aware that something strange was happening and already calculating how to respond. Her voice was cultured and clear, with just a hint of warmth that suggested she was naturally friendly despite the oddity of the situation. "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong—" Jake kissed her. It was supposed to be quick, just enough to sell the charade until he could pull her aside and explain and beg for her help. A brief peck, nothing more. But the moment their lips met, something shifted in the universe. She tasted like champagne and strawberries. Her lips were soft, slightly parted in surprise. For one impossible electric moment, Jake forgot this was fake. He forgot the photographer's camera clicking behind him. He forgot his family watching. He forgot everything except the warmth of her mouth and the faint scent of jasmine in her hair and the strange, overwhelming sensation that he'd been looking for this exact moment his entire life without knowing it. Then reality crashed back like a bucket of ice water. She pushed him away, her amber eyes blazing with a mixture of shock and fury. The force of her shove made him stumble back half a step. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" The photographer's flash went off with a bright pop. "Perfect!" That's exactly the kind of candid romance Maya wanted. The mystery woman's mouth fell open. Behind them, Jake heard the eruption of cheers and whistles from his family. Someone, probably Uncle Frank, shouted something about greeting your woman properly. Another voice called out congratulations. Jake realized, with dawning horror, that he had approximately 10 seconds to explain to this gorgeous, furious stranger why he'd just kissed her in front of 50 people and why she was apparently now his fake girlfriend. He kept his voice low, urgent. "I can explain." Her eyebrow arched dangerously, a look that suggested she'd perfected the art of withering skepticism. This had better be spectacular. The word hung between them like a challenge. Jake's mind raced, trying to find words that would somehow make this insane situation sound even remotely reasonable. But before he could speak, Rose's voice cut through the vineyard chatter like a foghorn, full of joy and triumph. She was bearing down on them with the determination of a woman who'd finally caught her grandson in the act of having an actual relationship. Behind her, his entire family was watching with varying degrees of interest, delight, and, in Derek's case, suspicious curiosity. The woman whispered sharply, her eyes never leaving Rose's approaching figure. "Who's Emma?" Jake hissed back. "You are. Please, I know this is insane, but I'll explain everything. Just play along for 2 minutes. Please." Her voice rose slightly. "Are you completely out of your mind?" Jake admitted the truth. "Probably. But my grandmother has a heart condition, and if she finds out I've been lying about having a girlfriend for 18 months, the shock might actually—" Rose reached them before he could finish. Without hesitation, she pulled the stunned woman into a bone-crushing hug that would have done a WWE wrestler proud. "Emma, sweetheart!" "Oh, you're even more beautiful than Jake described, though he certainly undersold those gorgeous eyes of yours." The woman stood frozen in his grandmother's embrace, her gaze shooting daggers at Jake over Rose's silver-haired shoulder. Her body was rigid with tension, every muscle taut with the effort of not immediately pushing away and exposing Jake's lie. She managed to get out. Jake supplied quickly. "Overwhelmed. Emma's overwhelmed. Meeting everyone at once can be intense." Rose released her and stepped back, beaming with the kind of pure joy that made Jake's guilt twist like a knife in his gut. "Nonsense. We're practically family, dear. I'm Rose, Jake's grandmother, but you call me Grandma Rose like everyone else does." The woman's professional composure struggled visibly against the absurdity of the situation. "That's very kind." Lily appeared at Jake's side, confusion still written across her young face. Mr. Hopscotch dangled from one hand, forgotten. Grandma Rose? But Emma isn't... Jake knelt down to his daughter's eye level, his heart pounding so hard he was certain everyone could hear it. Lily, honey, remember what we talked about in the car? About being polite to new people? Lily looked between Jake and the woman in the blue dress, her 8-year-old mind clearly working to make sense of the situation. She was smart, too smart sometimes, and Jake could see the questions forming behind her eyes. But finally, with the adaptability of children everywhere, she seemed to accept that adults sometimes did strange things that didn't make immediate sense. She turned to the woman and offered Mr. Hopscotch for inspection. Hi, this is my rabbit. His name is Mr. Hopscotch. Something in the woman's expression softened as she looked at Lily. She knelt down gracefully, bringing herself to eye level with the child, a gesture Jake noticed, respected, filed away as important. Her dress pooled around her on the grass, and she didn't seem to care about potential stains. Her voice was serious, treating Lily like a person rather than a prop. Mr. Hopscotch is very handsome. I can tell he's been well loved. Lily's face brightened. Daddy gave him to me when I was little, before I could even remember. The woman glanced up at Jake, something unreadable flickering across her face before she looked back at Lily. Then your daddy has excellent taste in rabbits. The moment of gentleness was interrupted by the arrival of more family members. Jake's mother Sarah approached with his father Tom, both of them dressed in their Sunday best. Sarah's face glowed with the kind of maternal joy that made Jake's guilt twist even deeper into his chest. She'd been so worried about him after Madison left, so desperate to see him happy again. And here he was, using her love against her. Sarah took both of the woman's hands in hers. Emma, I'm Sarah, Jake's mother. We've been desperate to meet you. When Jake kept making excuses about why you couldn't come to family dinners, I was starting to think... She laughed, embarrassed by her own admission. Well, never mind what I was thinking. You're here now, and that's what matters. The woman started to speak. Mrs. Morrison, Sarah interrupted gently. Sarah, please. And this is my husband, Tom. She gestured to Jake's father, a solid man with carpenter's hands and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners from years of smiling. Tom shook the woman's hand firmly, his grip the kind that spoke of decades working with wood and tools. Any woman who can put up with my son's work schedule deserves a medal. The boy practically lives in that workshop of his. Aunt Patricia appeared with her wineglass refilled, her shrewd eyes studying the woman, Emma, Jake had to remember to call her Emma, with undisguised curiosity. Speaking of which, Emma, dear, tell us about yourself. What do you do for work? The woman's amber eyes darted to Jake, clearly looking for guidance on what lies she was supposed to be telling. Jake gave a tiny, helpless shrug. He hadn't exactly had time to prep her on their fictional backstory or coordinate details or do any of the basic preparation that a fake relationship would require. She paused, her gaze drifting past them to the vineyard sign visible in the distance. Jake watched her mind work, saw the moment she landed on an answer. I'm a wine consultant. Jake blinked. That was actually brilliant. True enough to be believable if anyone checked, vague enough to avoid specific questions, perfect for the setting. Sarah clapped her hands together. A wine consultant? How fascinating. Do you work with vineyards here in Sonoma? The woman seemed to gain confidence. Yes, actually, and in Napa. I work with various establishments on their wine programs, pairings, inventory management, that sort of thing. It wasn't technically a lie, Jake would realize later, but in that moment, He was just grateful she was quick on her feet and willing to play along for reasons he couldn't begin to understand. Uncle Frank had joined the growing circle, his booming voice carrying across the reception area. "How did you two meet? Jake's been remarkably tight-lipped about the details." The woman looked at Jake again, this time with an expression that clearly communicated that he'd better have an answer for this one. Jake fell back on the story he'd told his mother months ago. "Coffee shop. She was reading this huge book about wine regions, and I made a terrible joke about studying for finals." The woman added smoothly, apparently deciding that if she was going to be trapped in this charade, she might as well commit to it. It was the worst pickup line I'd ever heard, but he looked so mortified that I felt sorry for him. Jake picked up the thread. "Plus, I bought her a chocolate croissant to apologize." She nodded, and there was almost a real smile tugging at her lips now. That helped. The family laughed, charmed by the story. More relatives were drifting over now, drawn by the commotion and the promise of finally meeting the famous Emma who'd been mentioned but never seen. Jake saw his cousin Derek standing at the edge of the group, arms crossed, detective's eyes sharp and assessing in a way that made Jake's stomach clench with new anxiety. Rose's satisfaction radiated from every inch of her small frame. "Well, I think this calls for a proper family photo. Jake, you and Emma should be in the center." Before either of them could protest, they were being herded toward the vineyard's scenic overlook, where the photographer had set up for family portraits. The crowd moved like a living thing, pulling them along whether they wanted to go or not. Jake found himself with the woman, Emma, he had to remember, Emma, pressed against his side. Her hand rested uncertainly on his chest as various aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends arranged themselves around them in a semicircle. She whispered through clenched teeth, her smile never wavering. "Smile like you mean it." Jake whispered back, "I am so sorry." Her response was barely audible. "You're going to be sorrier if you don't have a very good explanation ready the moment we're alone." The photographer called for everyone to get closer. Jake felt Emma's body tense against his, but to her credit, her smile never wavered. She played the part perfectly, laughing at Uncle Frank's terrible jokes about marriage and happiness, complimenting Aunt Patricia's dress with specific observations about the color bringing out her eyes, even kneeling down again to chat with Lily about Mr. Hopscotch when his daughter insisted that Emma needed to know that rabbits liked carrots, but loved lettuce even more. Through it all, Jake watched her with growing amazement and confusion. Why was she helping him? Why hadn't she exposed him immediately? What kind of person went along with something this insane, this potentially damaging to their own reputation? The questions piled up in his mind, but there was no opportunity to ask them. Not with his entire family watching, not with the photographer's camera clicking every few seconds, not with Lily tugging at Emma's hand to show her the flowers in her hair. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, the photo session finally ended. The family began to disperse toward the cocktail hour tables that had been set up near the main reception tent. Jake saw his chance. He announced to no one in particular, "Emma and I are going to take a quick walk." She wanted to see the rest of the vineyard, Sarah called after them, already halfway to the bar. "Don't be long. Dinner service starts in 30 minutes. Jake gently took Emma's elbow and steered her away from the main reception area, toward a quieter section of the vineyard where rows of grapevines stretched toward the rolling hills. Once they were out of immediate earshot, far enough that no one could overhear but close enough that it wouldn't look suspicious, she yanked her arm free. Her voice was low but firm. "Start talking, and I want the truth this time. All of it." Jake took a deep breath. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the rows of grapevines, and somewhere in the distance He could hear the wedding band tuning their instruments. He'd made a mess of this, dragged an innocent person into his web of lies, and now he owed her the truth. The whole, ugly truth. He began with the only thing that made sense. "My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm a liar." The woman waited, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Jake continued. 18 months ago, my fiancée left me. Her name was Madison Pierce. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. She was ambitious, beautiful, driven. I thought she was everything I needed. He saw the woman's expression shift slightly, not quite sympathy, but a softening around the edges of her anger. "What happened?" Her voice was quieter now, less accusatory. "She decided I wasn't everything she needed." The words came out more bitter than Jake intended, dragging up memories he'd tried to bury. "She left me for someone with better prospects." Her word, not mine. Apparently a carpenter who runs a small woodworking shop and has a daughter from a previous relationship wasn't quite the future she'd envisioned for herself. The woman's eyes flickered to where Lily was visible in the distance, still at the dessert table with some other children, her pink dress a bright spot against the green of the vineyard. Jake ran a hand through his hair. "After Madison left, my family, they meant well. God, they meant so well. But suddenly everyone was trying to set me up. Blind dates with their co-worker's sister, nice women from church, the daughter of my mom's hairdresser. My grandmother had a whole notebook full of potential candidates." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was relentless and exhausting and pitying, she supplied quietly, and Jake was grateful she understood. "Yes, like I was broken and needed to be fixed. So I invented Emma. I told them I'd started dating someone casually, nothing serious yet. Then it became more serious. Then it became exclusive. By the time I realized how deep in I was, it felt impossible to admit the truth without destroying the trust they had in me." The woman's expression was difficult to read. "Why, Emma? Why not just tell them you weren't ready to date?" "I tried that. For months after Madison left, I tried that." Jake's laugh was humorless. "But my grandmother had open-heart surgery 2 years ago. She's 80 years old, and every family gathering, she'd talk about how she wanted to see me happy again before—" He couldn't finish that sentence. The thought of losing Rose was too much. "I couldn't keep disappointing her, so I gave her what she wanted. A story, a hope, a lie." "So you lied to her instead?" It wasn't quite a question, more an observation. "I lied to all of them." He met her eyes directly, not letting himself look away from the judgment he deserved. "And then Maya announced her wedding, and suddenly everyone expected to finally meet this Emma I'd been talking about for 18 months. I thought I could make up another excuse, but Lily," he glanced toward his daughter. "She's 8. She doesn't understand why I keep talking about someone she's never met. She asked me this morning, in the car on the way here, if Emma was imaginary, if Emma was like her invisible friend from when she was 5. "What did you tell her?" The woman's voice had softened slightly. "I told her we'd talk about it later." Jake's voice cracked. "I'm supposed to be teaching her about honesty and integrity, and instead I'm teaching her that lying is okay as long as it makes other people happy. That you can deceive the people who love you if your reasons are good enough." They stood in silence for a moment. The sounds of the wedding reception drifted on the breeze. Laughter, music starting up, the clink of glasses being raised in toasts. The golden hour was approaching, That magic time when the sun turned everything warm and beautiful right before it set. It would have been romantic if Jake's entire life wasn't imploding. The woman finally spoke. Why me? Out of everyone here, why did you choose me? Jake almost laughed at the absurdity. Because you were standing alone, and your back was turned, and I was desperate and panicking. It wasn't a choice so much as pure, blind panic. If I could go back in time and undo this, I would. But I can't. So now you're here, and I've dragged you into this mess, and He stopped, forcing himself to look at her directly. I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. She studied him for a long moment, those amber eyes seeming to see straight through to all his failures and fears. You'd do it again, because you still need someone to be Emma. It wasn't a question, but Jake answered anyway. Yes, but I wouldn't ask that of you. What I did was wrong, involving you without permission, kissing you without consent, throwing you into this situation with no preparation. You should go back there right now and tell them all who you really are. Expose me. It's what I deserve. And your grandmother? Her voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Will be disappointed in me, as she should be. And Lily? That one hurt worse, like a knife sliding between his ribs. Will learn that her father is a coward who couldn't face his own family honestly. That I'm no better than her mother, who walked away when things got hard. The woman studied him for a long moment. Jake watched emotions flicker across her face. Anger still, yes, but also something that looked like understanding. Maybe even compassion, though he didn't deserve it. Finally, she seemed to come to some internal decision. I'll make you a deal, Jake Morrison. Hope sparked in his chest, dangerous and painful. What kind of deal? I'll be your Emma for today. Just today. I'll get you through this wedding, through dinner, through whatever family obligation you need me for. But after today, you tell them the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more excuses. Jake's throat was tight. Why would you do that? Her expression softened, and for a moment Jake saw past the sophisticated exterior to something more vulnerable underneath. Because your grandmother reminded me of my grandma Eleanor, my father's mother, who passed away 2 years ago. She had that same warmth, that same genuine joy in seeing family together. Eleanor raised me during summers when my parents were too busy building their business empire to remember they had a daughter. She looked away toward the Vineyard Hills. And because that little girl deserves a father who's honest with her, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So I'll help you today, but tomorrow, you fix this. You tell them the truth, and you deal with the consequences like a man. Relief washed through Jake so powerfully he felt dizzy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Her smile was wry. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince a vineyard full of people that we're a couple. Do you have any idea how couples actually behave around each other?
I was engaged once, so yes?
She raised an eyebrow.
To a woman who left you because you weren't ambitious enough. I'm not sure that's the healthiest relationship model to draw from.
She had a point. Jake spread his hands helplessly. Okay, what do you suggest? She considered this, her mind clearly working through strategy.
What did you tell your family about Emma? About how we met, how long we've been dating? Any specific details they might ask about?
Jake mentally ran through 18 months of accumulated lies. We met 10 months ago at a coffee shop in Sacramento. You're a wine consultant who travels a lot for work, which is why you haven't been able to come to family events. You're originally from Portland. She shook her head.
Too many specific lies to keep track of, and they'll trip us up. Here's what we do instead. We keep as close to the truth as possible.
I am a wine consultant. That part's actually true. I do travel frequently. We can say we met more recently, maybe 6 months ago, which explains why I haven't been to family events. And we can say I'm based in San Francisco, not Portland. That's closer to the truth. Won't that contradict what I've already told them? We'll say you were protecting my privacy early on because of my work. The wine industry can be surprisingly small and gossipy when it comes to consultants and their relationships. It's not entirely unreasonable. She was thinking like a chess player, several moves ahead. What else do they know? They'll ask about your family. Divorced parents, not close. That's actually true. Something flickered across her face. Old pain, quickly suppressed. I'm an only child. I live in San Francisco. I like my work. What else do I need to know about you? Jake took a breath. I'm 33. I run Morrison Woodworks, custom furniture, high-end cabinetry, built-in shelving, that kind of thing. Lily is my daughter. Her mother and I were never married. She left when Lily was 6 months old, and I haven't heard from her since. Lily's 8 now, smart as a whip, and the best thing that ever happened to me. The woman's expression had softened as he spoke about his daughter. You love her very much. More than anything in the world. More than I thought it was possible to love another person. That's good. That's real. Hold on to that when you're talking to your family. She glanced toward the reception area where guests were beginning to move toward the dinner tables. We should head back. Any other landmines I should know about? Jake thought of Derek's suspicious eyes, Madison's potential appearance, the countless questions that would come over dinner from relatives who had been waiting 18 months for this moment. My cousin Derek is a detective with Sacramento PD. He notices everything, remembers everything. If there's an inconsistency in our story, he'll catch it. Then we'll have to be very consistent. She straightened her shoulders like a soldier preparing for battle. Ready? Not even a little bit. Good. That makes 2 of us. She held out her hand with a small, wry smile. Come on, boyfriend. Let's go lie to your family. Jake took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite the circumstances. Her fingers were cool and steady, her grip firm, but not aggressive. As they walked back toward the reception together, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just set something in motion that he wouldn't be able to stop. Something that might crash and burn spectacularly, or might, against all odds, turn into something real. The reception tables were arranged in a U-shape around a wooden dance floor, with the bride and groom's table at the center. String lights had been turned on as the sun began its slow descent, casting everything in that warm, golden glow that made California evenings feel like dreams. Jake and the woman who wasn't Emma found themselves seated at a table with Rose, his parents, Sarah and Tom, Derek and his wife, Michelle, and Aunt Patricia with her husband, George. In other words, the maximum scrutiny table. Lily had been recruited to sit with the other children at a smaller table nearby, close enough that Jake could keep an eye on her, but far enough that she wouldn't overhear if things went south. She waved at him enthusiastically, a breadstick in hand, apparently having made fast friends with Maya's nephew. Derek's voice cut through the ambient noise as servers began bringing out the first course, a delicate heirloom tomato salad that looked too pretty to eat. So, Emma, Jake mentioned you're a wine consultant. That must keep you traveling quite a bit. The woman agreed smoothly. It does. I work with restaurants, hotels, and some private clients on their wine programs, selection, pairings, training their staff. It means I'm on the road more than I'd like. Derek's tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Must be hard on the relationship. Long distance is tough even for couples who've been together for years. Jake felt tension coil in his shoulders, but the woman didn't miss a beat. It can be challenging, but Jake understands that my career is important to me. He respects that. Jake picked up the thread. Because you're understanding about mine. The workshop keeps me busy, long hours, custom projects that can't be rushed when you're working with quality materials. Sarah beamed at them from across the table. You two seem very well matched. It's lovely to see Jake with someone who respects his work. The comment hung in the air, an implicit criticism of Madison, who'd never quite hidden her disdain for Jake's craft. The woman's voice was genuine. Jake's work is remarkable. Custom woodworking is a dying art. Anyone can buy mass-produced furniture from a big box store, but creating something unique, built to last generations, that takes real skill and vision. Tom Morrison's face lit up with the pride of a man who'd spent his life working with his hands. Exactly. That's exactly what I've always told him. Jake has a gift. He can look at a piece of wood and see the furniture hiding inside it, waiting to be revealed. The woman leaned forward slightly, like Michelangelo with marble, releasing the form that was always there. The comparison seemed to please Tom immensely. I like her. Jake, I like this one. Jake's response came out more sincere than he intended. Me too, Dad. He felt the woman glance at him in surprise. Rose's voice was gentle as she cut delicately into her salad. Emma, dear, tell us about your family. Will we be meeting them soon? Jake felt the woman's hand tighten almost imperceptibly on her fork. Her voice was quieter now, less rehearsed. My family's situation is complicated. My parents divorced when I was young and were not particularly close. They're both very focused on their careers, expanding the business, acquiring new accounts. It was always about the next deal, never about family the way you all clearly are. Rose's expression filled with genuine sympathy. That must have been lonely, sweetheart. It was. The woman's guard dropped slightly, and Jake realized she was no longer acting. This was real. I spent a lot of time with my grandma Eleanor, my father's mother, before she passed away. She worked in these vineyards, actually, right here in Sonoma County for 40 years. She's the one who taught me to appreciate wine, not as a business commodity, but as something people pour their lives into creating. Sarah's voice was warm. She sounds wonderful. She was. The woman smiled, but there was deep sadness in it. She had this little ranch house about 10 miles from here. During summers when my parents didn't want me around, she'd take me into the vineyards at dawn. She'd show me how to check the grapes, teach me about soil and sun and patience. She said winemaking was about respecting the land and the people who work it, that the best wines came from places where people cared more about craft than profit. Rose reached across the table to pat her hand. She would have loved seeing you here today, I think, surrounded by family who cares about you. The woman's voice was barely audible. Yes, she would have. Jake found himself reaching under the table to squeeze her hand gently, a gesture of comfort that had nothing to do with their charade and everything to do with recognizing real grief in another person. She looked at him in surprise, then squeezed back. Something passed between them in that moment, something that felt dangerously close to genuine connection. Rose's voice was decisive. Well, you're part of this family now, dear. And Morrisons know how to love loudly and often. We don't always do it perfectly, but we do it with our whole hearts. The woman's smile was genuine this time. I'm beginning to see that. The main course arrived, perfectly cooked beef tenderloin with roasted vegetables that filled the air with savory aromas. The conversation shifted to safer topics, Maya's beautiful dress, the vineyard's history, debate about whether the wedding cake would be chocolate or vanilla inside. Jake began to relax slightly, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd pull this off without further disaster. Then Madison Pierce walked into the reception. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Madison looked exactly as he remembered, polished, sophisticated, dangerous in the way that beautiful people who know their power can be. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves that must have taken hours to achieve. Her black cocktail dress was clearly designer, cut to emphasize her figure without being obvious about it. On her arm was someone Jake didn't recognize, a man in his 40s with silver at his temples and the kind of confident swagger that spoke of old money and no concerns about showing it. Derek muttered under his breath, "Oh, good. This should be entertaining." Michelle elbowed her husband sharply. "Derek? What? Everyone's thinking it." Madison scanned the reception, her eyes landing on Jake's table with laser precision. Her expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, curiosity, something that might have been annoyance or jealousy, before settling on a bright, brittle smile that Jake recognized. She wore that smile when she was angry but too well-bred to show it. She made her way over, her heels clicking deliberately on the wooden floor. Her voice was honey-sweet and razor-sharp. "Jake Morrison, I heard you'd be here. Imagine my surprise." Jake kept his voice neutral, refusing to give her any emotional ammunition. "Madison, I didn't know you were friends with Maya." "We reconnected through our yoga studio. Small world." Madison's eyes shifted to the woman beside Jake, assessing and calculating in that way she had of immediately sizing up potential threats. "And you must be the new girlfriend I've been hearing whispers about." "I'm Madison Pierce, Jake's—" The woman interrupted calmly, taking control of the narrative before Madison could position herself as somehow still relevant to Jake's life. "Ex-fiancé. Yes, Jake mentioned you." Jake had to suppress a smile, point to his mysterious helper. Madison's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Did he? How economical of him. And you are?" The woman extended her hand. "Emma Lawson." "I'd say it's nice to meet you, but that seems unnecessarily polite given the circumstances." Jake watched Madison process this, the direct challenge wrapped in perfect manners. She shook the offered hand briefly. "Indeed. Well, I hope you're enjoying yourself. Jake always did love these family gatherings." The comment carried an edge, an implication that Jake was somehow provincial, too attached to family obligations instead of pursuing bigger opportunities. The woman's voice was even. "I'm having a wonderful time. Your family is lovely, Jake." She emphasized the possessive, claiming him in a way that made Madison's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. The man with Madison shifted impatiently. "Madison, our table is over there." "Of course, darling." Madison touched his arm possessively, performing her happiness. "Jake, Emma, enjoy your evening." She started to turn away, then paused. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the woman's face. "You know, you look familiar." "Have we met before? Perhaps at a wine industry event?" Jake felt the woman tense beside him, but her expression didn't change. "I don't think so. I'd remember." Madison's smile took on a predatory quality. Maybe you just have one of those faces." She paused deliberately. "Or maybe we've crossed paths professionally." "What did you say your company was?" "I'm an independent consultant. I work with various clients throughout Northern California." "How interesting. Well, I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually." Madison's tone made it clear this was a threat, not a casual comment. With that ominous statement, she glided away toward her table on the other side of the reception area, her date following. Derek's voice was dry the moment Madison was out of earshot. I don't trust that woman as far as I could throw her, and I'm in pretty good shape. Aunt Patricia agreed readily. The woman has the warmth of a cobra and twice the venom. Sarah's gentle chide didn't quite mask her agreement. Patricia, that's not kind. Though I will say, I never felt Emma was quite right for our Jake. Rose patted the woman's hand. Don't worry about Madison, dear. She made her choice, and it clearly wasn't the right one for her or for Jake. Our boy is worth a dozen of whatever that was she was parading around. The woman's voice was soft but sincere. I can see that. When Jake met her eyes, he saw something there that made his pulse quicken, something that felt dangerously close to sincerity, to genuine affection that had nothing to do with their arrangement. It should have been impossible. They'd known each other for less than 2 hours, but the look in her eyes suggested that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to feel what he was feeling, that this fake relationship was starting to feel uncomfortably real. The rest of dinner passed in a careful dance of small lies and smaller truths. Jake found himself watching Tori. He'd learned her real name during a whispered conversation when Rose had gone to admire the wedding cake. With growing fascination, she moved through his family's questions like a diplomat navigating a minefield, deflecting when necessary, offering genuine responses when safe, always maintaining just enough distance to avoid tripping over inconsistencies. When dessert arrived, a delicate panna cotta that trembled on the plate, Derek leaned back in his chair and studied them both with the expression of a man solving a puzzle. His words were carefully casual. Emma, what part of San Francisco do you live in? Tori didn't hesitate. Russian Hill. Small apartment with a view of the bay if you lean out the window far enough. Derek nodded slowly. Nice neighborhood. Expensive. Wine consulting pays better than people think, especially if you're willing to travel and work odd hours. Michelle, Derek's wife, jumped in with a smile that was meant to soften her husband's interrogation. Do you ever worry about Jake when you're traveling? My sister does long distance with her boyfriend, and she says the hardest part is just missing the everyday moments. Tori's hand found Jake's under the table, and he realized she was anchoring herself to something real before she spoke. I do, but we make it work with phone calls and texts, and when I'm home, we make the time count. The answer was perfect, vague enough to be believable, specific enough to sound genuine. But Jake saw the tightness around Tori's eyes, the way her shoulders had tensed. She was exhausted from performing, from holding up this elaborate fiction for people she'd never met before today. As the wedding band launched into their first set and couples began moving toward the dance floor, Jake leaned close to her ear. You okay? Her voice was barely audible. Ask me again in an hour. The DJ's voice boomed across the reception. All right, folks, time for all you couples out there to show these newlyweds how it's done. Everyone to the dance floor. Rose made enthusiastic shooing motions at them from across the table. There was no graceful way to refuse without causing exactly the kind of attention they were trying to avoid. Jake stood and offered his hand. May I? Tori took it, her fingers cool against his palm. We'd better. They joined the other couples as the opening notes of an old standard filled the evening air. Jake placed one hand carefully on Tori's waist, holding her other hand in his, maintaining the respectful distance of people who were still learning each other's boundaries. But she stepped closer, closing the gap between them. Her voice was low enough that only he could hear. We need to sell this, remember? Couples who've been together for months don't dance like strangers. She was right. Jake pulled her closer, feeling the warmth of her body through the thin fabric of her dress. They began to move together, and he was surprised by how naturally they fell into rhythm. Her words came out soft, thoughtful. "You're a good dancer." My mother insisted on lessons when I was 16. She said it would make me more confident with girls. Did it work? Jake thought about Madison, about all the ways that relationship had slowly poisoned his self-worth. Well, I ended up engaged to someone who thought my life's work was a hobby I'd eventually outgrow. So maybe not the success story Mom was hoping for. Tori's laugh was genuine, warm. I think your mother would say Madison's loss was someone else's gain. The words hung between them, heavier than she'd probably intended. Jake searched her face, trying to understand what was happening here. This was supposed to be simple, a desperate arrangement, a temporary fix, nothing more. But the way she fit in his arms, the way she looked at him like he was someone worth knowing rather than someone to be fixed or improved, made his chest tight with something he couldn't quite name. His voice came out rougher than planned. Is that someone new? Tori's amber eyes met his directly, and for a moment, the pretense between them felt transparent as glass. For tonight, I suppose it is. They danced in silence, while around them other couples swayed and laughed. Jake became aware of details he shouldn't be noticing. The faint scent of jasmine in her hair, the way her heartbeat pulsed against his chest, the small callus on her right index finger that suggested she wrote by hand more than most people did in the digital age. He needed to break the spell before it consumed him entirely. Can I ask you something personal? Given that you kissed me without permission and dragged me into an elaborate deception involving your entire family, I think you've earned at least one personal question. Why did you really agree to help me? The truth this time. Tori was quiet for several long moments. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability that made Jake's protective instincts flare. Because I know what it feels like to disappoint people who love you. My parents wanted me to be focused, driven, ambitious above everything else, and I am those things. But I'm also lonely in ways they'll never understand. They taught me to build walls so high that nobody could hurt me, but those walls keep everyone else out too. She looked up at him, and Jake saw something in her expression that felt like recognition. Two people who'd learned to protect themselves at the cost of connection. Your family isn't trying to change you or fix you. They just want you to be happy. That's rare. That's precious. And I thought maybe, just for one day, I could help preserve that. The song ended, transitioning into something faster and lighter. Around them, couples adjusted their dancing styles or headed back to their tables. But Jake and Tori remained still, facing each other in the middle of the dance floor as if the rest of the world had temporarily ceased to exist. Jake's voice was rough with emotion. After tonight, I'm telling them everything. The whole truth. No more lies. Good. Tori's smile was sad and sweet at once. They deserve that. And so does Lily. Before Jake could respond, Lily herself came running up, her pink dress now sporting grass stains and what looked like chocolate frosting on the hem. Mr. Hopscotch dangled precariously from one hand.
Daddy! Emma! They're cutting the cake now! And I need you both to come see because it's 5 layers and has flowers made of sugar.
She grabbed both their hands, tugging them back toward the reception with the urgency of a child for whom cake ranked among life's highest priorities. As they followed, Jake caught Tori's eye over his daughter's head. Her expression said what words couldn't. "This is harder than I expected." His look replied, "I know. I'm sorry." But the moment for private conversation was lost because Madison was standing near the cake table, and the calculating look on her face suggested she'd figured something out, something that was about to make everything exponentially more complicated. Madison intercepted them before they could retreat, her date nowhere in sight. "Jake, a word? In private?" Tori's hand tightened on Jake's. "Anything you need to say to him, you can say in front of me." Madison's smile was sharp as broken glass. "How admirably protective. Though I suppose you have reason to be protective, don't you, Victoria?" The use of Tori's real name hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Jake felt Tori go completely still beside him. Madison's voice was honeyed poison. "You really should be more careful about whose restaurant you attend charity events at, Victoria. I saw you at the Harvest Foundation Gala last month. You were being honored for something. Business achievement, was it? The CEO award?" Tori's voice was carefully neutral. "I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else." "Do I?" Madison pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, turned the screen to show an image of Tori in an evening gown accepting a plaque. The caption was clearly visible. "Victoria Ashford, CEO of Ashford Wine Imports, receives Entrepreneur of the Year Award." Jake's stomach dropped. CEO. $50 million company, if you remembered the article he'd skimmed. And she was here, pretending to be his girlfriend, pretending to be someone named Emma, who was just a simple wine consultant. Madison's triumph was barely concealed. "So either you're Victoria Ashford, or you have an identical twin who runs a wine import empire. Which story would you like to go with?" Tori lifted her chin, and Jake saw steel beneath the elegant surface. "My professional life and my personal life are separate. I prefer to keep them that way." "How convenient. And does Jake know who you really are? Or have you been lying to him, too?" Madison's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Though I suppose lying seems to be a theme tonight." Jake found his voice. "Madison, this isn't..." "Isn't what? My business?" Madison's voice hardened. "You brought a fake girlfriend to a family wedding, Jake. A fake girlfriend who happens to be a CEO worth more than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. I wonder what your family would think about that." Tori stepped forward, her voice dropping to a level that only the three of them could hear. "What do you want, Madison?" "I want the truth. Are you two actually together, or is this some kind of elaborate scheme?" Madison's smile was cruel. "Because if it's a scheme, Jake's family deserves to know they're being manipulated." Jake's hands clenched at his sides. "You lost the right to care about my family when you walked away." "I lost the right? You're the one lying to them." Madison's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing around to make sure they weren't attracting attention. "Tell me the truth right now, or I'll tell them myself." Tori's voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone used to negotiating from a position of power. "We met recently. The circumstances were unusual, but what Jake feels for his family is real. And what I feel?" She paused, and Jake saw something flicker across her face. "What I feel is between Jake and me, not you." Madison studied them both, clearly trying to decide if she believed the non-answer. "How recently?" "Recently enough that we're still figuring things out." Tori's hand found Jake's again, and he felt the slight tremor in her fingers that betrayed her nerves. Which is why we'd appreciate privacy while we do that. Madison's laugh was brittle. Privacy? At a family wedding where everyone's watching you? How's that working out? Jake stepped closer to Madison, keeping his voice low. What's this really about? You left me. You made it clear I wasn't good enough for your ambitions. Why do you care who I'm with now? For a moment, Madison's mask slipped. Jake saw something that might have been regret or shame or simply anger at being called out. I don't care who you're with. I care that you're lying to people who don't deserve it. Your grandmother, Jake. She's 80 years old and she believes— Don't. Jake's voice was harder than he'd intended. Don't pretend this is about protecting my family. This is about you wanting to prove you were right to leave, that I'm still the same mess you walked away from. The truth of it hung between them. Madison's face flushed, and Jake knew he'd hit the mark. She recovered quickly. Believe what you want, but I'm watching you two, and if I find out you're using that sweet old woman's love to cover up some kind of con, I will expose both of you. With that threat delivered, Madison turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. Jake and Tori stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the wedding celebration continued. Laughter, music, the happy chaos of family gathering. But their small pocket of the world felt heavy with consequences. Tori's voice was quiet. She's going to be a problem. I know. Jake, I should tell you something. Tori turned to face him fully. What Madison said, it's true. I'm Victoria Ashford, CEO of Ashford Wine Imports. The company's worth about $50 million, and we handle distribution for vineyards up and down the West Coast. Jake processed this information, trying to reconcile the woman who'd knelt in the grass to talk to his daughter about stuffed rabbits with the image of a corporate CEO. Why didn't you tell me? Because people treat me differently when they know. Either they're intimidated or they only see the money and the position. They stop seeing me. Her voice carried old hurt. You looked at me like I was just a person, not a title or a bank account. I didn't want to lose that. Jake understood more than she probably realized. Madison had made him feel small, inadequate, less than. The last thing he wanted was to repeat that dynamic in reverse. You're still just a person who happens to be very good at business. You're not angry? I'm confused, and we definitely need to talk about all of this. But angry? He shook his head. You helped me when you had no reason to. You've been kind to my daughter. You've been— He stopped, searching for the right words. You've been real with me, even when you were pretending to be someone else. That matters more than your job title. Something in Tori's expression softened. We should probably get back to the table before people start wondering. Probably. But neither of them moved immediately. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken questions and the weight of revelations. Then Lily called out from the cake table, and the spell broke. They returned to their seats to find Rose watching them with knowing eyes. She didn't say anything, but Jake saw the questions there. His grandmother wasn't fooled. She'd lived too long, seen too much, to miss the signs of a relationship that wasn't quite what it appeared to be. The wedding wound down as evening deepened into night. The bride and groom departed in a shower of lavender and rice. Guests began gathering their belongings, making their goodbyes, promising to see each other at the next family gathering. Sarah caught Jake before he could escape to the parking lot. We'd love to have you and Emma over for dinner this week. Nothing fancy, just family. Maybe Thursday? Jake's panic must have shown on his face because Tori stepped in smoothly. I'm traveling Monday through Wednesday, but Thursday should work. What can we bring? Just yourselves. And maybe that risotto Jake mentioned you make. He's been raving about it. Sarah's smile was warm, trusting. Every word felt like another weight on Jake's chest. They finally escaped to the parking lot where Jake's truck sat between luxury sedans and SUVs. Tori looked at the worn Ford with something that might have been amusement or appreciation. Jake unlocked the door. I can give you a ride back to your car, or to wherever you're staying tonight. My car's at the venue. I drove myself. She paused, one hand on the door frame. Jake, about Thursday dinner. I know, we need to coordinate. Can we meet before then? Maybe coffee, somewhere we can talk without... He gestured vaguely at the vineyard where his family was still visible in the distance. Tomorrow. There's a cafe in Sacramento near Capitol Park. Neutral territory. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. They exchanged contact information, the mundane transaction feeling oddly significant. Tori's fingers brushed his as she handed back his phone, and Jake felt that same electric spark he'd felt when he'd kissed her hours ago. She seemed to feel it too, because she pulled her hand back quickly. I should go, before anyone else decides to interrogate us. Tori? Jake's voice stopped her. Thank you. For today. For everything. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. Her smile was tired but genuine. Ask me tomorrow if I regret it. She turned and walked toward her car, a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than Jake made in a year. He watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the night, and tried to figure out how his desperate lie had turned into something that felt dangerously close to truth. Lily was asleep in her car seat before they'd even left the vineyard grounds. Jake drove in silence, his mind churning through everything that had happened. By the time he pulled into his driveway in Sacramento, he'd almost convinced himself that tomorrow's coffee meeting would be the end of it. They'd coordinate one last dinner with his parents, then he'd confess everything and accept the consequences. But his phone buzzed as he was carrying Lily inside. A text from Derek. We need to talk. I ran a background check on Emma Lawson. Call me. Jake's blood ran cold. He got Lily settled in bed, still in her pink dress because he didn't have the heart to wake her. Then he stepped onto his back porch and dialed Derek's number. His cousin answered on the first ring. You want to tell me why there's no Emma Lawson from anywhere in California who matches the description of your girlfriend? Jake's mind raced. Derek, it's complicated. Uncomplicated. Now. Derek's voice had shifted into detective mode. I like you, Jake. Your family. But I don't like being lied to, and I definitely don't like watching my grandmother get played. Nobody's playing anyone. Emma, her real name is Victoria. She goes by Tori. She uses a different name for privacy reasons because of her work in the wine industry. The business can be competitive, and she doesn't want personal relationships affecting professional ones. It wasn't entirely a lie, Jake told himself, just a creative interpretation of facts. Derek was silent for a long moment. Victoria Ashford? The CEO? Yes, and she's dating you? A carpenter who runs a small workshop? Derek's skepticism was evident. Jake, that doesn't add up. People like that don't randomly date working guys unless there's something else going on. The implication stung. What? I'm not good enough for someone successful? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the situation seems unusual, and I want to make sure you're not being used or manipulated. And I want to make sure she's not using our family for some kind of networking opportunity or social experiment. Jake's anger flared. She's not using anyone. She's been nothing but kind and respectful. Then why the fake name? Why all the secrecy? Derek pressed. If this relationship is real and legitimate, why does it feel like you're both hiding something? Because we are, Jake thought. Because this whole thing started with a lie, and now it's spiraling out of control, and I don't know how to stop it without destroying everything. His voice came out more defensive than he intended. We're allowed to have privacy, Derek. Not everything needs to be investigated and analyzed. When it involves my family, yes, it does. Derek sighed. Look, I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. I'm trying to protect people I love. Grandma Rose is already talking about you two getting engaged. Mom's planning Sunday dinner next week so everyone can spend more time with Tori. If this isn't real, if you're going to break their hearts, I need to know now so I can manage the fallout. The weight of it pressed down on Jake's shoulders. Derek, I promise you, nobody's heart is going to get broken. Just give me until Thursday. Let me get through this dinner with Mom and Dad, and then I'll explain everything. Thursday. That's 3 days, Jake. Derek's voice softened slightly. I hope you know what you're doing. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like it's going to end badly for everyone. The call ended, and Jake stood on his porch looking out at his backyard. The workshop sat dark at the far end of the property, illuminated only by moonlight. He'd built that structure himself, board by board, using skills his father had taught him. It was supposed to be his legacy, proof that he could create something meaningful with his own hands. Instead, it felt like a monument to inadequacy. Too small, too modest, not enough to justify Madison's time or impress someone like Tori Ashford. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. Jake Morrison? This is Robert Chen from Heritage Hotels. We met briefly at a trade show last month. I wanted to follow up on your portfolio. We have 6 properties being renovated in Northern California, and we need custom furniture and built-ins for all of them. The budget is substantial. Would you be interested in discussing? Also, and I hope this isn't too forward, our board likes to work with family-oriented businesses, stable, reliable contractors who understand the value of commitment. Looking at your social media, it seems you have a lovely family. That matters to us. Jake read the message 3 times. This was it, the contract that could save his business. Morrison Woodworks had been bleeding money for 8 months since his biggest client had declared bankruptcy, owing him $50,000. The bank was threatening foreclosure on the workshop. He'd been taking on smaller jobs, barely making ends meet, trying to keep everything together for Lily's sake. Heritage Hotels could change everything. 6 properties meant potentially $200,000 in contracts, maybe more. It meant hiring back the 2 craftsmen he'd had to let go. It meant security for Lily, for himself, for the business his father had helped him build. And it hinged on his lovely family, on the illusion that he was stable, committed, exactly the kind of person their board wanted to work with. Jake stared at his phone, at Robert Chen's message, at the lifeline being offered, with strings attached he hadn't even known existed until this moment. Then he looked at Derek's earlier text, at the warning that this was all going to end badly. Jake should have called Robert Chen back immediately and declined, should have confessed to Tori that the stakes had just gotten exponentially higher, should have told his family the truth before this snowball rolled any further downhill. Instead, he texted back. Very interested. Would love to discuss details. How about early next week? The response came quickly. Perfect. My assistant will reach out to schedule. Looking forward to working with you, Jake. Heritage Hotels values family men. You and your girlfriend seem like exactly the kind of people we want representing our brand. Jake set his phone down and put his head in his hands. He'd just committed to extending the lie, to dragging Tori deeper into this mess, to using his family's love as collateral for a business deal. But the alternative was losing everything he'd built. Losing the workshop meant losing the only thing Madison hadn't been able to take from him when she left: his sense of purpose, his proof that he could create beauty and value through his own skill and effort. He'd figure it out. He'd find a way to make this work without hurting anyone. He just needed a little more time. The lie was easier to believe at midnight, sitting alone on his porch, than it would be in the morning. Jake barely slept. By the time dawn broke and Lily padded into the kitchen, still wearing her wrinkled pink dress, he'd consumed an entire pot of coffee and mentally rehearsed 17 different versions of his confession to Tori. Lily climbed into his lap, Mr. Hopscotch clutched to her chest. "Is Emma coming back?" Jake's chest tightened. "Why do you ask, sweetie?" "Because I liked her. She talked to me like I was a real person, not just a kid. And she made you smile the way you smiled before Mommy left." Lily's observation was delivered with the casual brutality of 8-year-old honesty. "Emma's complicated, Lily." "Is she your girlfriend for real, or is she pretend?" Lily looked up at him with eyes too knowing for her age. "Because yesterday, you said we had to be polite to new people, but you never said she was Emma before we got there." Jake had underestimated his daughter. She'd been quiet, cooperative, playing along, but she'd also been paying attention, adding up inconsistencies, reaching the obvious conclusion. He chose his words carefully. "I made a mistake, sweetheart. I told Grandma Rose and everyone else something that wasn't true because I was scared of disappointing them. And then Emma, her real name is Tori, helped me out of a difficult situation. But I'm going to fix it. I'm going to tell everyone the truth." Lily considered this. "Will Grandma Rose be mad?" "Probably, for a little while." "Will Tori stop coming around?" That was the question Jake couldn't answer. "I don't know." "I hope she doesn't." Lily squeezed Mr. Hopscotch tighter. "I liked having someone who felt like maybe we could be a whole family again. Like maybe you wouldn't be sad anymore." The simple statement broke something in Jake's chest. He pulled Lily closer, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and the lingering grass stains from the wedding. "I'm not sad, baby. I have you. That's enough." "But you're lonely. I can tell." Lily's voice was muffled against his shoulder. "You make dinner and help with my homework and read me stories, but then when I'm asleep, I hear you walking around downstairs. You don't sleep good anymore." Jake had no idea how to respond to that level of perceptiveness from a second grader. His phone buzzed with a text from Tori. "Capitol Grounds Cafe, 10 a.m. We need to talk about Thursday." Jake texted back. "I'll be there. There's something else I need to tell you, too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "That sounds ominous." "It's complicated." "Everything about this situation is complicated." A pause, then another message. "See you at 10. Jake spent the next 2 hours getting Lily breakfast, helping her change into normal clothes, and driving her to his parents' house, where she'd spend the day with Rose, while Jake dealt with the mess he'd created. Sarah was delighted to watch her granddaughter, asking casual questions about Tori that Jake deflected as best he could. Rose pulled him aside before he left. "That girl you brought yesterday? She's special." "She is. But she's not Emma, is she?" Rose's blue eyes were sharp despite her age.
Or rather, Emma is not all she is. Jake's stomach dropped. Grandma? Rose patted his arm. I've been alive 80 years, sweetheart. I know when people are performing, and I know when they're being real. She was performing for everyone else. But when she looked at you, when she talked to Lily, that was real. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me right now. You need to figure out what you want, and then be brave enough to go after it. Rose's voice was gentle. Your grandfather and I started with lies too, you know. He told his family he was courting a nice Polish girl they'd approve of. I was the Italian Catholic girl from the wrong neighborhood who his mother forbade him to see. Jake had never heard this story. What happened? He chose honesty. It was hard, and his mother didn't speak to him for 2 years. But eventually she came around because she could see how much we loved each other. Real love is worth fighting for, Jake.
Worth risking comfort and approval for. The question is whether what you have with that girl is real or just convenient. Rose kissed his cheek. Go. Figure it out. And bring her to Sunday dinner next week, regardless of what you decide. I want to get to know the woman who makes my grandson's eyes light up like that. Jake drove to Sacramento in a daze, Rose's words echoing in his head. By the time he pulled into the parking lot of Capitol Grounds Cafe, he'd worked himself into a knot of anxiety about how to explain the Heritage Hotel situation without sounding like he was using Tori. She was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 coffee cups waiting. She'd traded the elegant blue dress for dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her look younger, less CEO and more just Tori. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Jake slid into the seat across from her. You look different. So do you. She gestured at his standard uniform of jeans and a Morrison Woodworks t-shirt. More like yourself, I'm guessing. This is myself. Yesterday was performance. She finished his sentence. I know. That's what we need to talk about. How much performance can we sustain, and for how long? Jake wrapped his hands around the warm coffee cup. About that. Something happened last night after I dropped you off. He told her about Derek's background check, about the confrontation and the partial truth he'd fed his cousin. Then he told her about the Heritage Hotel's message, about the contract that could save his business, about the implications of appearing to be a stable family man. Tori listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. When he finished, she sat back in her chair. So let me make sure I understand. Your detective cousin knows something isn't right and is watching us. Your ex-girlfriend knows my real identity and is threatening to expose us. And now you have a business deal that depends on maintaining the appearance of a stable relationship. When you put it like that, it sounds worse than it is. Jake, it sounds exactly as bad as it is. But her voice wasn't angry, just tired. What are you asking me to do? This was the moment. Jake could back out now, confess everything to his family, lose the Heritage contract but maintain his integrity. Or he could ask Tori to keep playing along, to extend this charade long enough for him to secure the deal and maybe, somehow, find a way to make the fake relationship real. His voice came out rougher than intended. I'm asking if you'd be willing to have dinner with my parents on Thursday. Just that one dinner. And then next Sunday at Rose's house with the extended family. After that, I'll tell them everything. About how we really met, about the lies, all of it. But those 2 events, they're important. My parents have been looking forward to meeting you. And Rose specifically asked for you to be there. You mean they've been looking forward to meeting Emma? A fiction. Tori's voice was gentle but firm. Jake, this is spiraling.
Every time we do another event, the lies get deeper and the stakes get higher. When does it stop? After Sunday, I swear. After Sunday, I come clean about everything. Including the fact that you kissed a random stranger at a wedding and convinced her to impersonate your girlfriend? Tori's eyebrow arched. That's going to be a fun conversation. I know. I know it's going to be awful and painful and probably cost me my family's trust for a long time. But I need to do this right. I need to give them the chance to meet you, the real you, before I blow everything up. Tori studied him for a long moment. Why? Because they deserve to know that their instincts were right, that you're someone special, that their happiness about me being with someone wasn't misplaced, even if the circumstances were wrong. Jake leaned forward. And because I think maybe this doesn't have to be entirely fake. We've gotten along better in one day than Madison and I did in 3 years. You're kind to Lily. You challenged Derek without backing down. You fit with my family in a way that felt real? Tori supplied softly. Yes, real. The silence between them stretched long enough that Jake started to panic. He'd overplayed his hand, revealed too much, scared her off. Then Tori spoke. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll do Thursday dinner and Sunday at Rose's house. But under conditions. Her voice shifted into what Jake suspected was her CEO negotiating tone. First, after Sunday, you tell your family the truth. No more delays, no more excuses. Second, we start being honest with each other. No more secrets, no more surprises. If something comes up that affects this situation, we tell each other immediately. And third, she paused, and Jake saw vulnerability flicker across her face. Third, we acknowledge that there's something happening between us, something that started fake but doesn't feel fake anymore. And we figure out if that's worth exploring once we're not lying to everyone around us. Jake's heart hammered. You feel it too? I spent 8 hours yesterday pretending to be your girlfriend, and the hardest part wasn't lying to your family. It was lying to myself about how much I enjoyed it. Tori's smile was sad. I'm CEO of a $50 million company. I have everything I'm supposed to want: success, money, independence. But yesterday, playing house with you and Lily at a family wedding, I felt happier than I've been in years. That should terrify me. Instead, it just makes me curious about what happens if we stop pretending. Jake reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Then let's find out. After Sunday. Once everything is out in the open and there are no more lies between us and my family. After Sunday. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. But Jake, if we're doing this, if we're giving this a real chance, I need to be honest about who I am. The money, the company, the life I've built, it's part of me. And I need to know that won't be an issue for you. It won't be. But even as Jake said it, he felt the familiar twinge of inadequacy. Though I should probably see where you work, understand what your world looks like. And I need to see yours. The workshop, the furniture you make. If we're being honest about who we are, I want to know what you build. They sat there holding hands across a cafe table, two people who'd met under the worst possible circumstances, trying to figure out if they could turn a lie into something true. Finally, Tori pulled out her phone. Thursday. What time and where? 6:30. My parents' place in Sacramento. It's modest, nothing like what you're probably used to.
Jake, I grew up spending summers in a ranch house with vinyl siding and a vegetable garden in the backyard. Grandma Eleanor worked in vineyards for 40 years. I'm not some princess who'll be scandalized by normal people living normal lives. The defensive walls Jake had built after Madison relaxed slightly. Sorry. Madison used to make comments about my parents' house, about how small town it was. Madison sounds like she had a talent for making you feel less than. Tori squeezed his hand. For the record, from what I saw yesterday, your parents raised someone thoughtful and caring who's working hard to be a good father despite difficult circumstances. That's not less than. That's admirable. Jake had to look away before she saw how much the words affected him. Thursday, then. And I'll bring you to the workshop before Sunday so you can see what I actually do. It's a deal. She stood, shouldering her bag. Now I need to go handle some actual work. Running a $50 million company takes up more time than you'd think. Tori? She paused. Thank you for agreeing to this, for not running screaming in the other direction. Her smile was warm despite the complicated situation. Ask me again after we've survived your extended family. 40 people, you said? Give or take. This is either going to be the best decision I've ever made or the worst. No middle ground. She left, and Jake sat alone with cold coffee and the weight of what he'd just committed to. 2 more events. 2 more lies. And then everything would come crashing down. His phone buzzed. Derek. Thursday dinner at Mom and Dad's. I'm coming too. Wouldn't miss it. Jake groaned. Of course Derek was coming, because nothing about this situation was complicated enough without his detective cousin watching every word and gesture for inconsistencies. Another text, this one from Sarah. So excited for Thursday. I'm making pot roast, your favorite, and I can't wait to hear all about how you and Emma are doing. The guilt was a physical weight, but Jake pushed it aside and focused on the task ahead. 2 events, Sunday's big family dinner, then confession, consequences, and the hope that on the other side of all this mess, something real might be salvaged. He drove to the workshop, unlocking the side door and breathing in the familiar scent of sawdust and wood oil. Half-finished projects filled the space, a dining table for a client in Napa, custom bookshelves for a dentist's office, the small rocking chair he was making for Lily's upcoming birthday. This was his real world. Rough hands and splinters, measuring twice and cutting once. The satisfaction of transforming raw lumber into something beautiful and functional. Madison had never understood why he chose this over a corporate job with benefits and a 401k. She'd seen it as settling, as refusing to reach his full potential. But this was his potential. Creating things that would outlast him, that families would use and treasure. There was honor in that, even if it didn't come with a luxury car or a penthouse view. Jake ran his hand over the unfinished dining table, feeling the grain beneath his fingers. If the Heritage Hotels deal came through, he could afford to take on bigger projects, hire skilled craftsmen, maybe even expand into the empty lot next door. He could build something lasting. He just had to hold everything together for 6 more days. His phone buzzed again. Tori. I've been thinking, before Thursday, we should coordinate our story better. What if Derek asks something we don't have answers for? Jake smiled despite everything. She was thinking strategically, planning ahead, already invested in making this work. He typed back, Coffee tomorrow? We can create a detailed backstory. Or you could come to my office, see my world like you suggested. Tuesday afternoon, 2 p.m.?
Jake's stomach flipped at the thought of entering her corporate space, of seeing exactly how wide the gap was between their lives. But he'd agreed to honesty, and that meant not hiding from uncomfortable truths. "Send me the address." The response came with a pin drop in San Francisco's financial district. 17th floor. Ask for Victoria Ashford. And Jake? Wear whatever you normally wear. I want to introduce you as you are, not who you think I need you to be. Jake looked down at his sawdust-covered jeans and work-worn flannel. She was asking him to walk into her high-powered business world looking like exactly what he was. A carpenter, a craftsman, someone who worked with his hands instead of spreadsheets. It would be humiliating. It would be uncomfortable. It would force him to confront every inadequacy Madison had ever pointed out. But Tori had asked, and she deserved honesty. Jake typed back, "See you Tuesday at 2. Then he picked up his belt sander and got to work on the dining table, losing himself in the rhythm of wood and tools and the simple satisfaction of building something that would last. Tuesday afternoon found Jake standing outside a gleaming glass tower in San Francisco's financial district, feeling like an imposter in his clean work jeans and a button-down shirt that was his version of dressing up. The Morrison Woodworks logo was embroidered on the breast pocket, a small act of defiance against the urge to hide who he was. The lobby was all marble and chrome, filled with people in expensive suits moving with purpose. Jake gave his name to security, and within minutes an assistant appeared to escort him to the 17th floor. Tori's office occupied a corner with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. She stood when he entered, and Jake saw her executive persona in full force. Tailored black pantsuit, hair pulled back severely, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed documents. But her smile when she saw him was all warmth. "You came." "You invited me." Jake took in the sleek furniture, the awards lining one wall, the photographs of vineyard partnerships. "This is impressive." "It's work." She gestured for him to sit, then rounded her desk to lean against it casually. "But I wanted you to see it, to understand what my days look like when I'm not pretending to be your girlfriend at family weddings." Jake settled into a chair that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage. "How did you build all this?" "My father started the company importing French wines. When he and my mother divorced, they were more interested in fighting over assets than running the business. I was 25, fresh out of business school, and I saw an opportunity." Her voice carried pride mixed with old pain. "I bought them both out using money Grandma Eleanor left me. Shifted our focus to California wines, built relationships with smaller vineyards that the big distributors ignored. 10 years later, we're the third largest wine distributor on the West Coast. Your parents must be proud." Tori's laugh was hollow. "They're proud I'm successful. They just wish I'd done it their way, in their timeline, following their vision. Success on your own terms apparently doesn't count as much as success by following the prescribed path." Jake heard echoes of his own story in hers, the struggle to prove worth on terms others didn't value. "Madison used to say I was wasting my potential, that woodworking was fine as a hobby, but real men climbed corporate ladders. Real men build things that matter and raise daughters who know they're loved. That's not wasting potential. That's using it exactly right." Tori's voice was fierce. "I've worked with CEOs who run $100 million companies but can't be bothered to show up for their kids' birthdays. Success that comes at the cost of being human isn't success. It's just accumulation." The words settled something in Jake's chest that had been unsettled since Madison left. Not everything needed to be bigger, flashier, more ambitious to have value. Sometimes small and solid and real was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Need to talk. Tonight. It's important. Jake's stomach dropped. He showed Tori the message. Her expression tightened. He knows. Or he's figured out enough to be dangerous. I should meet him. Clear the air before Thursday. We should meet him. Tori's correction was firm. If we're doing this together, we face the consequences together. They arranged to meet Derek at a bar near Sacramento that evening. Jake spent the intervening hours showing Tori his workshop, watching her run her hands over the unfinished dining table with genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship. She asked intelligent questions about wood grain and joinery techniques, and Jake found himself relaxing into his element, showing off projects with pride instead of defensiveness. But the approaching confrontation with Derek hung over everything like a storm cloud. The bar was quiet on a Tuesday night, mostly regulars nursing beers and watching basketball on muted televisions. Derek was already there, occupying a corner booth with 3 beers waiting, one for each of them, a peace offering or an interrogation prop. He watched them approach with cop eyes. Glad you both came. We need to get some things straight. Jake slid into the booth across from his cousin. Derek, before you start, I know the truth. Derek's interruption was flat, factual. Or enough of it. You two didn't meet months ago through some cute coffee shop encounter. You met at Maya's wedding. I pulled the venue's security footage. You kissed a complete stranger, and she went along with it. Jake's heart hammered. Derek, let me finish. Derek's voice was tired, not angry. I've spent 3 days trying to figure out what kind of con you're running. Identity theft? Corporate espionage? Some elaborate scheme to defraud the family? He looked at Tori. But everything I can find says Victoria Ashford is exactly who she claims to be. Successful, respected, no criminal record, no history of scams, which makes this whole situation even more confusing. Tori met Derek's gaze directly. There's no con. Jake panicked when his family expected to meet Emma, and I made a split-second decision to help a stranger. It was impulsive and probably stupid, but it wasn't malicious. Why? Derek leaned forward. Why would a CEO risk her reputation to help some random guy lie to his family? Tori's voice softened. Because I saw his grandmother hug him with so much joy. Because I saw his daughter watching with hope that maybe her father had found someone to make him happy again. And because I know what it's like to disappoint people who love you. And sometimes, helping someone avoid that pain is worth the risk. Derek absorbed this, his detective brain working through implications. And now? Because from where I sit, you two are in deep. Thursday dinner, Sunday at Grandma Rose's. How long were you planning to keep this up? Jake forced himself to meet his cousin's eyes. After Sunday, I'm telling everyone the truth. The whole story. How we met, why we did this, all of it. That's gonna break Grandma's heart. I know, Jake's voice cracked. But keeping the lie going will break it worse in the long run. Derek was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. Finally, he took a long pull of his beer. I won't expose you, but I'm coming to both events and I'm watching. If this turns into something that hurts my family more than necessary, I will step in. Understood? Relief flooded through Jake. Understood. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have to face everyone once the truth comes out. Derek's expression softened slightly. Though for what it's worth, you two seem good together. If the circumstances were different, I'd be happy for you. Tori's hand found Jake's under the table. The circumstances will be different. After Sunday.
They left the bar with Derek's conditional blessing and 48 hours until the dinner with Jake's parents. Jake spent Wednesday building the dining table commission and trying not to obsess over every possible way Thursday could go wrong. He picked up Lily from school, helped with homework about fractions and spelling, and tucked her into bed with a story about a rabbit who learned to be brave. Lily's question stopped him at the door. "Daddy, is Tori coming to Grandma Sarah's house tomorrow?" "Yes, sweetie." "And then Sunday to Grandma Rose's?" "That's the plan." Lily was quiet for a moment. Mr. Hopscotch clutched to her chest. "And after that, are you going to tell everyone she's not really Emma?" Jake's chest tightened. He sat back down on the edge of her bed. "Yes." "How did you know?" "Because you told me you made a mistake. And mistakes have to be fixed, even when fixing them is hard." Lily's 8-year-old wisdom cut straight to the heart of it. "Will Tori still be around after? When everyone knows the truth?" "I don't know, baby. I hope so." "Me too." She makes you smile like you mean it. Thursday evening arrived with the inevitability of a deadline. Jake picked up Tori from her San Francisco office, and they drove to Sacramento in tense silence. She'd dressed down, jeans, a soft blue sweater, minimal jewelry, but still managed to look elegant in ways Jake couldn't quite define. Sarah and Tom's house was a modest ranch style in a neighborhood where people knew their neighbors and kids played in the street until dinner. The driveway was already occupied by Derek's sedan, and Jake could see his mother moving around the kitchen through the window. Tori's hand squeezed his. "Ready?" "Not even close." "Good. That makes 2 of us." Sarah opened the door before they could knock, enveloping them both in enthusiastic hugs. "You're here! And Emma, that sweater is beautiful. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready." The house smelled like pot roast and fresh bread. Family photos covered every surface. Jake's school pictures, Lily's milestones, Tom and Sarah's wedding portrait from 30 years ago. It was warm and lived in, and full of love earned through decades of showing up for each other. Derek was already seated at the dining table, positioned where he could observe everything. He nodded at them with an expression that said, "I'm watching." Tom shook Jake's hand with his firm carpenter's grip. "Good to see you, son. And Emma, thank you for coming. Sarah's been excited about this all week." They settled around the table, Jake and Tori on one side, Derek strategically placed at the end, Sarah and Tom completing the circle. The pot roast was perfect. The conversation flowed easily, and for 20 minutes, Jake almost forgot he was living a lie. Then Sarah asked the question he'd been dreading. "So, Emma, have you given any thought to meeting Lily? Jake's daughter is such an important part of his life, and if you two are getting serious..." Tori's response was genuine. "I've actually met Lily, at the wedding. She's wonderful, smart, sweet, loves her stuffed rabbit." Sarah's face lit up. "You have? Jake, you didn't mention that." Jake scrambled. "It happened naturally. Lily was at the dessert table and they just started talking." Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. "How convenient." The tension in the room shifted. Tom noticed it. "Derek, what's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just making an observation." But Derek's tone suggested otherwise. Sarah looked between her son and nephew with concern. "Is something wrong?" This was it. The moment where Jake could confess, come clean, get ahead of the inevitable exposure. But his phone buzzed before he could speak. A text from Robert Chen at Heritage Hotels. "Jake, so sorry to do this. Your contract has been withdrawn. Our board received information suggesting instability in your personal life. We need contractors who represent our family value. Best of luck with future endeavors." Jake's blood ran cold. He showed the message to Tori under the table, watched the color drain from her face. Another text, this one from an unknown number. "Thought you should know I had lunch with Robert Chen. Mentioned how your girlfriend is actually a CEO playing pretend. How your whole stable family image is fabricated. Heritage Hotels deserves honesty, don't you think? Madison." The rage that flooded through Jake was white-hot and consuming. Madison had cost him the contract, the lifeline for his business, and she'd done it with calculated cruelty disguised as righteousness. Tori read over his shoulder, and Jake saw fury flash across her face. Derek noticed the exchange. "What's going on?" Sarah's concern deepened. "Jake, sweetie, you're pale. What happened?" The dam broke. Jake couldn't hold it together anymore, couldn't keep juggling lies and consequences and the crushing weight of disappointing everyone he loved. His voice came out rough. "I need to tell you all something. About Emma and me. About how we really met." Tom set down his fork. "Jake? Emma's not her real name. It's Victoria, Tori. And we didn't meet months ago at a coffee shop." Jake forced himself to meet his parents' eyes. "We met at Maya's wedding. I'd been lying about having a girlfriend for 18 months because I was tired of being set up and pitied. And when everyone wanted to meet Emma, I panicked. I saw Tori standing alone and I kissed her. A complete stranger. And I convinced her to pretend to be my girlfriend for the day." The silence that followed was crushing. Sarah's voice was small, hurt. "You've been lying to us? For 18 months? "Yes." "And you," Tom looked at Tori, "you went along with this? Deceived my mother, my wife, all of us?" Tori's voice was steady despite the tension. "I did. And I'm sorry. It was wrong, and I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway." Derek's expression was unreadable. "Why?" "Because I saw a man who loved his family so much that he'd rather hurt himself than disappoint them. Because his grandmother reminded me of mine, and I couldn't stand to see that joy turn to sadness." Tori's hands were shaking slightly. "And because somewhere in the middle of this mess, I stopped pretending. What I feel for Jake is real. What I feel for Lily is real. The circumstances were wrong, but the feelings aren't." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "How could you do this to us, Jake? We trusted you." "I know, Mom. I'm so sorry." Tom stood abruptly. "I need some air." He left through the back door, and Jake watched his father's shoulders shake with disappointment or anger, or both. Sarah followed, leaving Jake, Tori, and Derek alone at the table with cooling pot roast and shattered trust. Derek's voice was quiet. "You couldn't wait until Sunday? Madison sabotaged my business contract. She told Heritage Hotels everything." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "And I realized I was about to make it worse by dragging this out 2 more days. Better to confess now than have them find out from someone else." Derek considered this. "What contract?" Jake explained about Morrison Woodworks, about the financial strain, about the opportunity that had just been ripped away. As he spoke, he felt the full weight of his failures crushing down, failing his family's trust, failing his business, failing to protect Lily from the fallout. Tori's voice was fierce. "I can fix the business problem. Ashford Wine Imports needs custom fixtures for our new tasting rooms and offices. It's legitimate work, market rate, no charity involved. I don't want your charity. Jake's response came out harsher than intended. It's not charity, it's business. I need quality craftsmanship, and you provide it. Tori's eyes flashed. Stop punishing yourself by refusing help. That's pride, not integrity. Derek watched this exchange with something approaching approval. She's right, Jake. You're so busy proving you don't need anyone that you forget asking for help is strength, not weakness. The back door opened. Tom and Sarah returned, faces composed, but eyes red. Sarah's voice was measured. We need time to process this. Both of you should probably go. Mom, Jake started. We love you, Jake. That hasn't changed. But trust takes time to rebuild. And right now we're hurt and confused. And we need space. Sarah looked at Tori. I don't know what to think about you. Part of me wants to be angry that you participated in this deception. But part of me sees someone who cares about my son and tried to protect him in a misguided way. Tori's voice was thick with emotion. For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt any of you. And everything I said about Jake being remarkable, about his work having value, about him being a good father, all of that was true. Tom spoke for the first time since returning. Actions have consequences. You both need to face them. They left the house in silence, driving back toward San Francisco with the weight of disappointment heavy between them. Tori broke the quiet first. I'm sorry about the contract. About Madison. About all of it. Not your fault. Jake's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Jake, about my offer for the Ashford work. I meant it. It's not charity. I legitimately need fixtures and furniture for 3 locations. If you're not comfortable with it because of us, I can refer you to other opportunities in the industry. But please don't let pride destroy what you've built. Jake wanted to argue, to insist he'd figure it out on his own. But Derek's words echoed in his head. Asking for help is strength, not weakness. His voice came out defeated. Can we talk about it later? After I've processed that I've destroyed my family's trust and probably guaranteed they'll never forgive me? They'll forgive you. Tori's certainty was unshakable. It won't happen overnight, but they love you too much not to forgive you eventually. Jake wanted to believe her, but the look on his mother's face, the way his father had walked away without looking back, suggested forgiveness was a longer road than Tori thought. They drove in silence until Jake pulled up outside Tori's apartment building. She hesitated before getting out. What happens now? With us? I don't know. Jake's honesty was raw. I'm about to lose my business. My family barely wants to look at me. Lily's going to have questions I don't know how to answer. And Sunday's dinner at Rose's house is going to be... Do you still want me there? The question hung between them. Jake could say no, could release Tori from any obligation, could face his extended family alone and accept whatever judgment came. It would be easier for her, cleaner, less complicated. But he'd promised himself honesty, and the honest truth was that facing this alone terrified him. His words came out barely above a whisper. Yes, if you're willing. But I understand if you're done with this mess. Tori leaned across the console and kissed him. Not the desperate kiss from the wedding or the performed affection at the reception, but something soft and real and full of promise. I'm not done with you, Jake Morrison. I'm just getting started. She left, and Jake drove home to find Lily asleep with Mr. Hopscotch and a note from Rose saying she'd put his daughter to bed. His grandmother had added a postscript. Whatever happened tonight, it will work out. Have faith. Saturday morning brought a call from Rose. Sunday dinner is still happening.
Your mother told me what you did, and yes, I'm disappointed. But I'm also 80 years old, and I've seen enough family drama to know that love matters more than perfect behavior. Bring Tori, bring Lily, bring yourself. We'll figure the rest out together. Jake spent the weekend building something in his workshop, working through his emotions with hammer and saw and the steady rhythm of creation. By Sunday afternoon, he'd finished a dining table unlike anything he'd made before. The surface was live-edge walnut, the grain telling its own story. Inlaid along the border were the names of every Morrison family member, carved in careful script. In the center, where the wood grain formed the natural heart shape, Jake had inscribed words that felt like both apology and promise. Built on truth, held together by love. Loading the table into his truck required help from a neighbor. Lily watched from the porch. Is that for Grandma Rose? It is. What do you think? I think it's beautiful. I think it says sorry without having to say the words. Lily's wisdom continued to astound him. But you should still say the words, too. At 3 o'clock, Jake pulled up to Rose's Victorian house with Lily in the passenger seat and Tori following in her own car. The driveway was already crowded with vehicles. The entire extended family had shown up for the promised confrontation or reconciliation or whatever this afternoon would become. Derek helped Jake unload the table, studying the craftsmanship with appreciation. This is really good work. Thanks. She worth it? All this mess, all this pain? Is Tori worth it? Jake looked across the lawn where Tori was crouched down talking to Lily, both of them giggling about something. Despite everything, despite the chaos and consequences, his answer was simple. Yes. Derek clapped him on the shoulder. Then fight for it. Fight for her. Fight for your family's forgiveness. Fight for the life you want. But fight honestly this time. They carried the table into Rose's dining room, where 40-plus family members had gathered. The room went quiet as Jake and Derek positioned the piece in place of Rose's old table. Rose ran her fingers over the carved names, tears streaming down her weathered face. Jacob Morrison, you've broken my heart, and then mended it all in one weekend. Jake's voice cracked. Grandma, I'm so sorry. For lying, for using your love against you, for making you believe something that wasn't true. Come here, boy. Rose pulled him into a hug that smelled like lavender and forgiveness. You made a mistake. A big one. But you're owning it. And you're trying to make it right. That counts for something. Sarah stepped forward, Tom beside her. We're still hurt, and we're going to need time to trust you again. But you're our son, and we love you even when we're disappointed in your choices. Tom added gruffly, the table helps. Shows you put thought into the apology instead of just expecting words to fix everything. One by one, family members approached, some offering hugs, some keeping distance, all processing the revelation in their own way. Aunt Patricia was skeptical. Uncle Frank tried to make jokes that fell flat. Derek's wife, Michelle, pulled Tori aside for a quiet conversation that Jake couldn't hear. Lily tugged on Jake's hand. Daddy, can I say something? Rose called for quiet. Lily has something to share. Lily's voice was small but steady. I know my daddy made a mistake, but he's trying to fix it. And Tori helped him even though she didn't have to, because she's nice and she likes us. I think we should give them both another chance." The simple plea from an 8-year-old shifted something in the room. Children had a way of cutting through adult complexity to find the heart of things. Rose addressed the family. "My granddaughter is wiser than most of us."
Jake made a mistake, but he's correcting it. Tori participated, but she's taking responsibility. We can choose to hold grudges, or we can choose to forgive and move forward. I choose forgiveness. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it softened. Conversations resumed, though cautiously. Sarah invited Tori to help in the kitchen, and Jake watched nervously as his mother and the woman he was falling for talked quietly over potato salad and dinner rolls. Derek found him on the back porch. "Mom's grilling Tori about her intentions. Should I be worried?" "Depends on what Tori says." Derek's smile was knowing. "But from what I can see, she's holding her own." 20 minutes later, Sarah emerged. "Jake, can we talk? Just us?" They walked to the far corner of Rose's garden, where privacy was possible. Sarah's expression was serious. "Tony told me she's falling in love with you, that she knows the circumstances were wrong, but the feelings are real. Is that true for you too?" Jake's throat was tight. "Yes." "Then you need to do this right. No more lies, no more shortcuts. If you want a relationship with her, build it honestly. Introduce her to Lily properly. Let them form their own bond without using your daughter as leverage or shield. And for God's sake, talk to someone about why you thought lying was better than being vulnerable." "Mom, I mean it, Jake. You've been carrying Madison's rejection like a wound that never healed. It's affecting your judgment, your self-worth, your ability to trust people who care about you." Sarah's voice gentled. "Your father and I love you. We want you happy. But happiness built on lies always crumbles. Build it on truth instead, even when truth is harder." They returned to find dinner being served on the new table. Jake had worried it would feel like accepting payment for forgiveness, but instead, it became a symbol of new beginnings. Family gathered around the walnut surface, passing food and stories, slowly knitting back together what Jake's deception had torn. Tori fit naturally into the chaos, holding her own with Aunt Patricia's interrogation about business practices, laughing at Uncle Frank's jokes, helping clear plates when dinner ended. She wasn't performing anymore. This was just her, real and present, and choosing to be part of this complicated, loving family. As evening fell and guests began departing, Rose pulled Jake and Tori aside. "You two have work ahead of you. Rebuilding trust takes time. But you're starting from a foundation of genuine feeling, and that matters. Don't waste this second chance." Tori's voice was soft. "We won't. I promise." They left together, Jake following Tori's car back towards Sacramento, where they'd agreed to talk without the weight of 40 people watching. At a quiet park near the river, they sat on a bench and watched moonlight dance on water. Jake spoke first. "I meant what I said Thursday. What I feel for you is real. But I need to do this right, for Lily, for my family, for us. That means taking time, building something genuine without the pressure of lies or expectations or business deals hanging over us." "I agree." Tori's hand found his. "I want to know you without the performance. I want you to know me, the CEO, and the woman who still misses her grandmother and gets lonely in her expensive apartment. The whole complicated person, not just the role I play. Can we do that? Start over, but this time honestly?" "I think we owe it to ourselves to try." Tori's smile was hopeful. Though, fair warning, I'm going to hire you for those Ashford fixtures. Separate from us, purely business. I really do need quality craftsmanship, and you really do need the work. Jake wanted to argue from pride, but practical necessity won. Okay, but market rate. And a formal contract, so there's no confusion about mixing business and personal. Deal. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow past, both understanding that the real work of building trust and love was just beginning. The fake relationship had ended at Rose's dinner table, but something real was being born in its place. 3 months later, Morrison Woodworks was thriving. The Ashford contract had led to referrals, which led to more work, which led to Jake hiring back his former employees and even expanding. Lily had adjusted to having Tori in their lives, not as a replacement mother, but as her own person, someone who took her to bookstores and taught her about winemaking with grape juice and treated her intelligence with respect. Jake and Tori dated properly, slowly, learning each other's quirks and habits without the pressure of deception. She met his friends. He attended her business events. They argued about politics and laughed at terrible movies and built something real, brick by careful brick. 1 year after the wedding where they'd met, they returned to the same Sonoma vineyard for Maya's anniversary party. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Rose pulled Jake aside as sunset painted the hills gold. You going to make an honest woman of her? I'm working up to it. Work faster. I'm 81 now. I'd like to see you married before I'm too old to enjoy it. Jake laughed, but his grandmother's blessing mattered. After dinner, as the band played and couples danced, Jake led Tori away from the crowd to the same spot where they'd stood a year ago when she'd agreed to help a desperate stranger. His voice was steady. A year ago, I stood here and asked you to trust me for 1 day, to help me through an impossible situation, and you said yes for reasons I still don't fully understand. I said yes because sometimes you have to take chances on people. Tori's smile was warm with memory. Well, I'm asking again, but this time I'm asking for more than a day. Jake pulled out the small velvet box he'd been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Victoria Ashford, will you marry me? For real this time, no lies, no pretending. Just us building something true together? Tori's eyes filled with tears as she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like promise and hope and all the futures they'd build together. Yes, absolutely yes. Around them, the family that had forgiven them erupted in cheers. Lily came running up, Mr. Hopscotch under her arm, demanding to see the ring and asking if this meant she could be in the wedding. Derek shook Jake's hand with genuine happiness. Told you it was worth fighting for. Rose beamed with satisfaction. Now that's how you do it. Honestly, openly, with everyone watching. Much better than last year's nonsense. As the celebration swirled around them, Jake held Tori close and marveled at how a desperate lie had transformed into the truest thing in his life. Sometimes the wrong beginning could lead to the right ending, as long as you were brave enough to choose honesty when it mattered most. They married 6 months later in Rose's garden, surrounded by the family they'd almost lost to deception, but had earned back through truth. Lily was flower girl, Mr. Hopscotch got his own tiny boutonniere, and Madison wasn't invited. Jake built their marriage bed himself, walnut and cherry wood joined with careful precision, designed to last generations. Tori commissioned a wine blend for the reception, working with a small Sonoma vineyard her grandmother had loved. When their daughter was born 18 months after the wedding, they named her Eleanor Rose, honoring both grandmothers, both the women who taught them about love that lasted. And sometimes, on quiet evenings,
They'd tell the story of how they met, to anyone brave enough to ask. The desperate kiss, the elaborate deception, the moment truth became more important than comfort. It wasn't a perfect story, but it was theirs, built on mistakes and forgiveness and the courageous choice to let love be real.